Welcome back, folks. Joining us now is Oklahoma Labor Commissioner Mark Costello. Commissioner Costello, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Michael.
Of course, we had a pretty big change come in November's election on a federal level, so we're going to have a new congressional makeup, if you will, next year in Washington, D.C. with Republicans now in control of the Senate. So let's talk about the tax code. Can Congress make changes to the tax code, and if so, what impact could that be?
They can, but will they? That's the big question. I think the number one thing they should look at, we have the highest corporate tax rates in the world today. Not 30 years ago we did not, but we do today. And we wonder why U.S. corporations park trillions of dollars offshore, would rather compete in other countries. We need to look at the disincentives we have for creating jobs and prosperity.
So let's just say that they tackle that issue and the United States cuts the corporate tax rate or reduces it for companies that may have moved offshore and come back to the United States, kind of incentivize them to come back. What would the impact be to the economy? What would we be looking at there?
Well, I think you're going to find more investment. When you have more capital, you have more investment. And you have to keep in mind that Canada has a tax rate of 18% on corporations. Ireland, 12.5%. Where would you rather pay taxes? And the reality is that money goes where it's well treated. We live in a world economy. Our tax code should reflect that, not the special interests, the $900 billion, according to Senator Coburn, that we give away in earmarks and special privileges. That doesn't benefit America. It benefits the people to whom those targeted special interests are designed.
You mentioned Dr. Coburn and the report he put out, Decoding the Tax Code. I take it you've read the report. What do you make of the report? What did you find in there that was interesting?
I think that we collect $1.7 trillion worth of corporate taxes. We give away $900 billion of special interest incentives. We've come to a time in our economy, and I think Senator Coburn would certainly say this, where CEOs are more interested in hiring the right lobbyists, retaining the right lawyers, attending the right fundraisers, than they are about creating the right products, targeting the right markets, and hiring the right people. In other words, they are more concerned about the incentives, the subsidies, the credits coming out of government. That's not the way America ought to be. It's not how we will be competitive.
Yeah, you're talking about the playing field is not even across the board, and so we're creating incentives and disincentives for businesses.
Well, I was once told that what is good is simple, what is complex is evil. The tax code started out at about 17 pages. Today, over 9,000 pages. It's not the IRS's fault. It is the elected representatives who have made it complex at the behest of lobbyists and lawyers. We have more lawyers involved with compliance of federal regulations than we have patent lawyers. Something is not going in the right direction. It's time to address the disincentives.
Okay, so for the viewer at home right now, how does this apply to Oklahoma? We've been talking kind of a macro across the country and at the federal level. How does this apply into Oklahoma?
Well, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that corporations don't pay taxes, they just collect taxes. So one way or another, individuals are paying for not only taxes and subsidies and credits, but they're also paying for subsidizing of compliance and regulations, which some people say represents 12% of our economy. Jeb Bush said that 12%, almost $2 trillion is utilized trying to comply with the EPA, with the Department of Labor, with fill in the blank, the DOJ. These costs are burdening the economy and do not bode well for a robust American prosperity.
So you've heard the conversation that we've had earlier today about the recent case and the ruling by the Supreme Court. Took up question 640. What were your thoughts going through that process? What were you hearing from folks all across the state as Labor Commissioner, whether they be businesses or employees? Did they understand the complexity of what was at stake here?
Well, I think the Supreme Court understood the simplicity of the vote on November 4th. In other words, the people of Oklahoma do not want an activist Supreme Court which is interfering with our elected representatives who say that government should be smaller whenever possible, and we should not incentivize the engorgement of government through Supreme Court regulations. I'm very happy that they ruled the way they did.
So on this topic of tax cuts, we've got about a minute left here. What do you think about the tax cut conversation in Oklahoma? You heard two recent state lawmakers suggest that more tax cuts could be coming. What are your thoughts on that as a business owner?
3 times more businesses come out of California per capita and go to Texas rather than Oklahoma. And why not? You can go to Texas and get 0% state income tax. Or now you can go to Kansas and get 0%. Or you can come to Oklahoma and pay 5%. Well, that's 12% more on top of the federal tax rate at the highest rate. So my point is this: we live in a federal system. Oklahoma should be competitive. We should not try to mete out fairness or the politics of envy. We should keep Oklahoma competitive.
And are you hearing, in terms of competition from businesses and everything across the state, are they aware of what's happening in Kansas and Texas? Do you kind of feel this squeeze?
Well, I think that it's evidenced by the number of companies going from California to Texas. They should be coming here. We should provide the level playing field with the state to our north and the state to our south.
And let me ask you specifically on this. I think this is an interesting point. There's been discussion at the Capitol on either phasing out the state's income tax, doing it gradually over time, or putting mechanisms in place where if we hit a certain growth peak, we'd trigger a cut. What would you recommend from an economic impact for the state?
Well, as a businessman who's operated businesses in over a dozen countries, in my workaday world before becoming an elected official, I would say let's keep taxes low, let's be competitive. 0 is a great number.
Thank you so much for being here, sir, and thank you for all that you do for the state. Well, folks, we will be right back just after this.